A good day to everyone. Today we will be discussing the chapter entitled The Challenges of Gender and Race, wherein two early theorists named Charlotte Perkins Gilman and W.E.B. Du Bois presented their theories. I am Liberty de Guzman, and together with me is Miss Ana Maria Claus, Miss Shira Carpus, Miss Tina Ricci de la Cruz, and Mr. Bill Deliso. So first, let me introduce to you who is Charlotte Perkins Stetson Gilman. So Charlotte Perkins Stetson Gilman is an evolutionist and was born as Charlotte Perkins on July 3, 1860 in Hartford, Connecticut. So she grew up poor because her parents divorced early, wherein their father left her and her mother to live as poor relations to the Beecher family, wherein they moved from house to house. And since she grew up poor, she was poorly schooled, and her adult life was marked by tumultuous or toxic personal relationships. So in 1884, she was married to Charles Stetson, pero they only ended up in divorce. So si Gilman, nagsulat siya ng isang nobela entitled The Yellow Paper at tungkol ito sa relasyon ng isang ina who is depressed and is told by her husband at ang kanyang doktor na iwanan ang intelektual na buhay at iwasan ang pagsusulat or any stimulating conversation. So in this book, the woman sinks deeper into depression and madness kasi she was left alone in the yellow wallpaper nursery. So nakaramdam si Gilman ng hopelessness against the tyranny of male-dominated institutions and is heard in the repeated refrain of "but what is one to do?" So between in her first and second marriages, a period of 12 years happened. So in that period, Gilman had a number of passionate affairs with women. However, on her second marriage to George Gilman, which is a cousin of hers, somehow became successful, and it became an important relationship for Charlotte, and some of her best work was done during the courtship and after marriage. So Gilman was also able to write over 2,000 works, including short stories, poems, novels, political pieces, and major sociological writings. She is also the founder of The Forerunner, which is a monthly journal sa karapatan ng mga kababaihan at mga related issues. So, Women and Economics, ito ay isang pinaka-importanting theoretical work of Gilman, at itong libro na ito ay dumaan sa mahabang proseso bago siya ma-release. So, Gilman, she was also politically active. So she often spoke at political rallies and was a firm supporter of the Women's Club movement, which was an important part of the progress toward women's rights in the United States. But, however, Gilman was sick with cancer. So since she was sick with cancer, she died on her own hand on August 17, 1935 in Pasadena, California. So, yung theory ni Charlotte Perkins Gilman is very interesting because she focuses on the issues of Wollstonecraft's critique, kung saan nakita ni Wollstonecraft ang mga kababaihan na dependent daw sila sa marriage kasi ito yung way nila para magkaroon sila ng lugar sa mundo, kaya they lure men into marriage sa pamamagitan ng sexual attraction, and simultaneously they have to present themselves bilang mahihina at umaasa or even dependent. So Gilman takes this critic at inintindi niya ito in a Spencerian evolutionary perspective, kung saan dependence upon marriage physically changed women, and it created an unnatural emphasis on sex. So let us proceed with the concepts and theory, the social evolution of gender. So Gilman herself understood the history of human societies that moves from single to complex systems with various elements being chosen through the mechanism of survival of the fetus. So dito, she has seen humans, they began as savages who pursues individual gain or as brute animals. So the males would hunt for food and fight for one another for sexual rights to the females. However, this competition among men was individual and oftentimes nagre-resulta ito sa kamatayan ng karamihan. On the other hand, ang mga babae ay may karapatan para pumili sa mga lalaki kung sino ang best fit for mating, and mostly all of the needs of a family were provided by women. So, we can see here that life is short and brutal. So since meron ngang competition at ito yung naging driving force nila para sa survival, yung competition between men, it resulted in death. So, dahil sa patuloy na competition among species in the natural environment, ang mga tao, they gradually developed social organizations na lampas sa natural base. At ang society ay inahalin tulad sa isang organismo kung saan ang society ay nagsimula lamang as small cells of social organization and eventually it joined with other small cells over time. So si Gilman, she says that society is the fourth power of the cells, meaning society starts growing and patuloy lang ang paglago nito over time at nagmumultiply na siya. So yung reason for this simple is because just as in organic evolution, which has more complex social systems, and since there is a level of social cooperation and division of labor, they have now a greater chance of survival than do individuals or simple societies. So, as societies become more complex and more social, individuals must and need to rely on each other in order to survive. At hinalintulad ulit ito ni Gilman sa mga organs sa ating katawan, kung saan kailangan nito dumepende sa ibang organs at mga proseso. Kaya, therefore, every social unit, katulad ng individuals and structures, must depend upon others for survival. Humans at one time were equally affected by the environment. Parang mga hayop lang. Ang mga hayop, alam natin, mabilis sila maapektuhan ng pagbabago sa klima ng environment natin. At dahil sa pagbabago na ito, kadalasan kailangan nilang umalis dito at maghanap ng bagong tirahan or else mamamatay sila. Pero ang mga tao, they were once affected by environment. But since they are socially organized, yung organization na yon ay naging daan para ang mga tao ay mamuhay na hindi na naapektuhan ng kanilang environment. So now, humans can exist in almost any environment on or off the planet. So as humans, we separated ourselves from the natural environment, but we still tend to create a new environment for us to live in. So Gilman stated that humans are influenced by the social environment of culture, structure, and relations rather than the natural setting it lives in. And because of this environment, this social structure made humanity's chances of survival better in this economy. So all species are defined by their relationship to the natural environment. As stated in the functionalist terms, katulad lamang ng isang organismo kung saan hahanap siya ng paraan para makapag-survive, ay ganun din ang society. At isa sa mga paraan para makapag-survive ang society ay kailangan nito ng isang ekonomiya. At ito ang tumutukoy sa atin. Thus, we are therefore most human in our economic relations. Katulad na nga lang sa argument ni Marx na we are alienated from our nature since we are taken away from participating directly in our economy. So si Gilman on the other hand argues that alienation occurs in gender. So alienation in gender is therefore influence in gendered relationships to the economy. Katulad na lamang ng mga kababaihan kung saan limitado lang ang partisipasyon nila sa kanyang mga workplace. Moving on with balancing of self and race preservation. So as we all know, survival is a necessity that urges the natural law selection which results in a functional balance between self and race preservation. So nag-argue na naman si Gilman na that the basic driving force in humanity is economic production. In all species, kailangan ang survival dahil ito ang driving force ng mga tao para magkaroon sila ng natural laws, wherein ang natural laws na yun nagre-resulta ito sa balance between self-preservation and race preservation. In natural selection of self-preservation, nagde-develop ito ng mga characteristics that individuals need to be successful in surviving on their own. Ibig sabihin, they need to fight for food, sex, and so on. So, this natural selection enables the individual to fight for that right. Race preservation strives to succeed for the whole species. So race preservation, on the other hand, strives to succeed for the whole species. And they develop characteristics that enables their whole species to succeed in the struggle for existence. An important point here is that the relationship between self and race preservation ay nababalanse, kung saan individuals are selfish enough to fight for their own survival and selfless enough to fight for the good of the whole species. Ibig sabihin, sila ay makasarili para may paglaban nila ang kanilang mga sarili at para rin makasurvive ito. Pero they are still selfless para sa kanilang uri at para makasurvive ang uri nila at sa kung ano ang ikakabuti nito. So as humans start to evolve and become specific, they depend on social organization for survival. Thus, human themselves institutes laws and customs that support the balance between self and race preservation. So Gilman referred to this process of institutionalization as accumulation of precedent. And as our laws and customs take the weight of time or history, they also become objective social facts that have independent effects. Sa ibang salita, ang society natin ay naging isang evolutionary force kung saan ang relasyon nating mga tao sa ating kapaligiran ay pinaghiwalay. Other than the economy, meron rin namang ibang mga bagay katulad na lamang ng art, religion at edukasyon at institutions na nag-reinforce at nag-legitimize ng balance between self and race preservation. So itong mga ito ay naging kakaiba o unique sa ating kapaligiran. Siyempre, nakaka-relate pa rin tayo sa natural na mundo. Ngunit itong social environment na in-establish nating mga tao ay naging importante para sa evolutionaryong pag-uunlad natin. So, itong modelo na ito ng mga bagay, it worked for quite some time, but it did not last because patriarchy and monogamy became dysfunctional, even if they were once functional. So, while patriarchy and monogamy were at one time functional, Gilman argues na ngayon, dysfunctional na sila. So the same as how economic necessity pushes change, that over time it creates laws and customs that upholds characteristics and produces social behaviors, culture, institutions that justifies the laws and customs. However, the social loop does not result in greater species survivability, but rather in gender, sex, and economic dysfunctions.